Okay, so our next risk comes from, I would say, complications. So one thing that we are particularly vulnerable to in our culture with our deification of efficiency is we want to try stuff, of course, and we don't want to pay the price of trying it well. And so, we fly off to some vacation and we barely get a taste of the culture before we have to fly back because I want to say that I did Thailand or I did this. And we have this same mentality, like how long does it last? Okay, I'll take it. I can just fit it in from now until this, and I'll be at work at that meeting tomorrow and this and that and the other. And it's kind of this scarcity maximizing efficiency mentality. It's a nightmare when it comes to this terrain, because while it may or may not, depending on the unique circumstances, be better than nothing, it is not optimal. Optimal is not doing more and more useless things faster. Optimal is getting clearer about what is the right thing at the right time, in the right way, at the right dose, for the right reason, for you, and doing one thing. There's a great book called The One Thing. There's another great book called 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. But The One Thing is about reductionism. Our body is in a dualistic reality. Our consciousness is not, except when it's totally locked in the body. But the body, for me to choose to make this video, I'm not talking with my girlfriend. I'm not taking a nap. I'm not meditating. I'm not taking psychedelics. I'm not making money. I'm not going for a walk. I'm not drinking a nice cup of coffee. I'm talking to you. For me to make this video, I can do one thing. Is it the right thing? I think so. Meaning, one of the ways that I have always learned is by putting what I'm mulling about, externalizing the semi and unconscious mind into the conscious mind through language, through, you could call it teaching, but it's really talking with the intention that you, the projected other, could make sense of it, could follow along the journey, because that is the same level of verbal articulation that allows me to make sense of it. And so I might be mulling in semi-consciousness, but making a video or writing, that's why I've written all my books, it's like, I want to learn this before I forget it. And so I'm doing this because this is potent terrain in my life. And I want to do it with excellence. And so what better way to be more conscious of it all than to try and put it into words? And since I'm going to go to all that trouble, why not share it? Maybe someone benefits. It's not ultimately just for you. It's I'm certain I'll benefit, and maybe you will too. And that brings me to this risk factor of people trying to do too much of too many things and basically collapsing or falling apart in the same way that it's kind of like if you're surfing on a wave. I mean, let's say you've got, you're water skiing. and the boat goes a little bit too slow. It gets a little bit too diffuse. It's pulling too many things at once. So it slows to a certain point. At a certain point, you sink. You can't stay on the surface. And this is the vulnerability when we do anything. So we've got a couple of blind spots. One is more is better. It never is. But, whether it's money, sex, whatever it all that, more is not always better. Now, when we're in a scarcity mentality, when we're in a depression, we may obsess about money, and more money would be better, and it would. But if you look at the actual science, one of the most vulnerable population groups are actually billionaires who just sold their business because they've just lost their identity. They've got more money than they possibly know what to do with. They don't have any role models and stuff, and they're just suspended there, and they're not moving forward. So many sudden billionaires in that kind of situation go into depression, addiction, whatever, and that. So you wouldn't really say, if you could have said, well, why don't you just work part-time, or why don't you develop a hobby and give a lot of it to charity or something and not just be lost in this place, you wouldn't really say that they've been blessed. Their quality of life has gone down by this sudden influx of money combined with a loss of identity. Okay, so more of anything in unlimited amounts is not good. So it's all about regulation. It's all about regulation. That's what diet is about. That's what thought is about. That's what, the difference between a massage and a concussion. Someone massaging your head and someone killing you with a blow to the head or rupturing your brain is regulation. We're looking at generic or neutral forces that applied at 5 pounds per square inch of pressure could soothe a headache, and applied at 2,000 pounds per square inch of pressure crack the skull. We're talking about the same force, pressure, but if it's not regulated, if it's not attuned to the source that it is applied, it is the difference between healing and violence, medicine and toxicity. It's the same with people. You ever had a person, you can't get enough of them, you fall, and you move closer and you move closer. At some point in proximity, at some duration of time, that relationship will become toxic. There is a dose of every person that within the ecology of both people's psychology and physiology, at which doing more of the same goes from medicinal to toxic. And of course, you get the peak at that fine line, where you get the most medicine without it becoming toxic. So there's this bell curve. It's like it goes from no benefit at all to maximizing, then to toxicity. And whether you're an investor in money, whether you're an investor in spirituality, whether you're an investor in a relationship, both people's job is to come as close as you can where the value is going up per decreased distance. But hold it at the point from becoming toxic. Now, consciousness is the tool there. And this goes right back into, it's 70% of our income is determined by our human relationship skills. That you could extrapolate that out and say then relationship skills are create 70% of the value of within our global economies. So in other words, lousy relationship skills could destroy 70% of the value of the economy. Doubling our skill to interact with one another could increase the economy by 70%, doubling our skill at being able to interact with one another as a country. Novel idea. Actually have a subject in high school, a subject in school on how to have effective, potent, healthy, win-win ethical relationships. Be the most interesting study in school. Of course, it's not in school, of course, because the same consciousness that says, let's not put that in school, is the same consciousness that says all drugs are equal, and for your own good, we're going to put you in prison for exploring your consciousness with any of them, for any reason. I mean, that is a pretty blunt level of stupidity, pretty blunt. Blunt is always stupid, complicated. Electricity is good, electricity is bad, stupid. 2 volts of electricity for this gadget, 8 volts for this gadget, 240 volts for this gadget, at this amperage, at this rate of consistency, with this rate of fluctuation, you have the whole technological revolution because it's complicated. It's not one size fits all. All drugs are not good. All drugs are not bad. All drugs are not good for you. All doses are not good for you. All doses are not bad. It's complicated. It takes energy. It takes science. It takes thought to be complicated. But back to this, issue of relationship, we've got this blind spot. More is better. Is it good or bad? So simplicity, more is better. Then we've got this, I would call it a relic of the heroic mythology. Now, the relic of the heroic mythology gets translated into things like the heroic dose. Well, who doesn't want to take the heroic dose compared with the, what would be the opposite of the heroic dose? Well, in our culture, we would polarize that into the loser's dose or the chicken dose or whatever. So do you want to be a chicken or a hero? You want to be one of the big guys, It gets into that stupidity of these big trucks, where people drive around with these huge four-wheel drive trucks with giant tires, burning up, 10 miles to the gallon. Do you go off-road? Nah. Do you tow something once or twice a year? So what's all this about? Well, I want to be big. We like being big. We like being heroic. We like being powerful. I want to be well built. I want a tall man. I want this. I want power. Why? Power to do what? How about power to think? Yeah, I don't really relate that to my mythology, but we like big. However, this is not necessarily intelligent, and if we relate it to something like food. Now, of course, we feel like we're getting our money's worth as we get obese, it's a healthy portion, I like this place. Well, just more than I need to eat. It's quite aggravating, Half of my arguments at restaurants is, could I get a half size of that? And if they say no, which is normally the case, the question is, do I either want to put in my body something that's going to make me sluggish if I eat the whole thing, or do I feel comfortable paying for it and throwing away half because I'd like a little of this and a little of that and a little of this, and that'd be delicious, and I'm just going to throw the rest away. Or all these different kind of stuff. So the size is proportion to the purpose. Now, let me give you an example. So one of the things I'm most interested in is what I would call bridge building and mediating. And so, just to give an example, while I was on MDMA, one of the questions was, how can I bring more love in my life? So I'm on this state, I'm feeling all this stuff, and I'm writing and I'm recording. And one of my ideas went like this. I work 8 hours a day, or at least I used to, but a considerable percentage of our time is spent at work. That means work relationships, in some cases, will be more significant and long-lasting than romantic relationships. You know, if you see a woman or a man 6 hours a week for a hot date, sure, it's exciting, but you're with your crew, you're with your colleagues 6 hours a day. You know, and maybe that relationship comes and goes in a year, but you're with your company for 8 years. I've been owning my company for 25 years. So, and several girlfriends come and go, you know, long before my crew change. And so I'm thinking, increase the love in my work environment. And I think, how about give them all a $5 an hour raise? Well, you know, it'll probably cost me another 20 grand a year. You know, that's 20 grand. I can't go to Thailand or do this, you know, so, but it will bring more love in my life. So let's do it. So I make a list of all these ideas and stuff to bring more love in my life on MDMA and and that's the goal. And so every idea I have, I look at every area of my life. How could I do it here, 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 here? I could give these neighbors a gift. I could help my crew. I could do this, that, and the other. Come out, implement that. Implementation is the goal. I'm not trying to get so thrown out there that I'm looking at, you know, cities 2,000 years in the future on the outer rings of Jupiter. I mean, there's not really that much I can do with my daily life by examining the electrical outlets in a city 2,000 years in the future out in the outer rings of Jupiter. I mean, it's interesting for that reality, and it's interesting to get a sense of how vast the universe is. So if that's my goal, and I'm feeling stuck, like I'm thinking in limited boxes, I want to expand, fine. But if my goal is to bring more love in my life, it's not going to help with that either. It's back to that thing, is it relative? So I implement that idea. As a nice side note, my income went up when I gave my crew an across the board, every single one, $5 an hour raise starting immediately. My income went up to my great surprise, echoing research done by one TED speaker about the Scandinavian countries who have more billionaires per capita than the United States, who have like a $20 minimum wage. And I interviewed 30 people in Copenhagen when I was there about quality of life, satisfaction, 30 for 30 loved their job, 30 for 30 loved their country, 30 for 30 loved their government, 30 for 30 had little to no fear. It's amazing. It's and then I look around the quality of the parks, the water, brilliant. So I go away being enamored with the reality that the average Dane has a 300% higher quality of life and 3 times less low-grade stress and anxiety than the average American. Love it. I don't care how they got there. Socialist democracy was their tool. More power to them. It's not about dogma. It's about the people. Are people's well-being going up using intelligent metrics as a result of doing X, Y, and Z? If they are, do it. communist, not communist, capitalist, doesn't matter. It's the people that matter. And it's attuning to what is making that people happier. Every single Dane is college educated. They were all college educated. It's just an amazing system. I've gone into that in other areas, so I won't go there. But my point is, my own experience, which I was not anticipating at all, I thought I was going to lose $20,000 a year for this. My income went up because crew turnover plummeted, by 80% instantly. Crew motivation went up by 60 to 80%. Their hours worked up. They started begging me, can we work Saturdays? Fine, okay. And they're happy, and the clients like them. And so I'm working less, they're working more, they're making more money, and I'm making more money. Complete surprise. But it just goes to show that our capitalist thing, which is all about how to save money and da-da-da. This wasn't a saving money. It looked like I was giving away 20 grand. But that's how I make money. The Scandinavian countries with $20 minimum wages and all that, they care about their people and they get more billionaires. So just a little question here. The minority is a great statement. In the history of humankind, the majority has never been correct. And if you understand that bell curve analogy, if you understand how every single thing goes through a bell curve dynamic, you will understand why. The key is in the bell curve. The key is always in the minority. The minority always has the next big and best thing that the majority doesn't yet know about and hasn't adopted, often due to the bureaucracies enacted by the majority. The majority has never, ever, in the history of humankind, been ahead of a faction of the minority, which is why we need to love and protect our minorities. There are sacred seeds for our species' future. Bigger is better, and more is better. Attuning to what we're trying to go for. So I'm doing a lot of work which is kind of this mediating thing. Like I want to go into a realm, and then I want to look at my reality from that realm. I want to see stuff that I didn't see when I was not in that realm or not in that state. And then I want to bring it back, and then I want to implement it, and then I want to watch what happens to this reality. That's my goal. Not channeling so-and-so, whatever. That's my goal. Now, my microdosing and kind of blending, so for me, there's this point, like there's a lot of talk. Now, this gets back to you're going to have to do your own work, which is not what most people who are seeking in some state of desperation for an answer want to hear, of course, because if you felt totally comfortable with your ability to see and know what was good for you, you probably wouldn't be seeking. And yet, there's often more danger in doing what someone else says than finding out what works for you. So, the good and the bad news is you don't have to go out and hear what anyone else has to say. But you do, I recommend you go out and hear what a lot of people have to say a lot, and use that as topography to create a map of probability. But then you're the only one who can say you want your house in the mountains, or you want your house in the valley, you want your house in the tropics, or you want your house here. You're the only one who can do it. What other people can say is that there's a probability that if you do this in this way, things will happen like this. Well, if there's someone that likes their house in the mountains and they've found the highest peak in the world, they're going to be all excited. Come up here. I've never found a higher peak. But wait a minute. Who said the highest peak is the most important thing? Not interesting to me. I want to be in this liminal space where I'm bringing gifts back into this reality. And the rest, not really what I'm at right now. Right now. So this is the challenge and the blind spot here. And another kind of piece of that is let's say the idea that truth matters. So let's say, the multiverse, the many, many dimensions of reality that extend to the right and left, above and below what we're conscious of, to the right and left that we have observing and measuring devices to explore, are all just as true as this reality for the consciousness that is in them. And so psychedelics expand consciousness. So let's say you go off 100 dimensions to the left of our dimensions in which what we hear as sound exist in a spiraling calligraphy, for example. So it's a dimension where sound shows up as shape, and you don't actually hear sound, you just see shapes. And the shapes all have texture and meaning that makes no sense here, but it makes complete sense there. So you're there, you realize, wow, this is real. It is. Yeah, it's absolutely real. And you realize it. It's real. And so you want to go over there, and you want everyone to know. But there are infinite dimensions that are real. Maybe someone rather wants to watch Seinfeld instead of hearing about the reality of interesting calligraphy that sounds like sound. It's like, no, you don't get it. This is the truth. It's a truth. It's absolutely real. But everyone here, from a very egotistical point of view, is going to decide whether or not it is a truth that is interesting to them based on how it affects their relationship, how it fits into the ecology of their current mental ecosystems, how it fits into with their emotions, whether it makes them nervous, whether it helps them make any money, if they're in that mindset that we've all been brought up that more money is good, doesn't make me any money. I mean, how am I going to do calligraphy in a foreign world? Who's going to pay me for that, I could be the best calligrapher in the multiverse in that dimension. And over here, people aren't interested in calligraphy. It's just a cultural fad that calligraphy is out of phase and nobody's going to pay you for it. So nobody, I'm not interested. So this gets back to this sense of subjectivity. And it's got to be enough. It's got to be enough for you. That you take the doses and substances for you, for the reasons that are important to you, at the doses and level that are effective for those reasons. And that whether this culture calls you a hero, whether you're taking the hero's dose or the chicken's dose or the this or the that or whatever, you're following this person or that person, none of that matters except in the politics of those groups and circles, which are not designed for your well-being. The politics of any group and what is and isn't sanctioned in any group is not designed with you in mind. It's usually designed in a way to validate the original leader or explorer of that group. Let's say someone's fed up with all the lies in their life, so they start a paradigm of radical honesty. They love it. So then they do a teaching, this is the recipe for radical honesty. And now suddenly anyone who says, I'm part of the radical honesty group, is measured based on how they apply that data. But there's a perfectly other group, perfectly other intelligent group That's practicing not voicing all their thoughts and just sitting with them. And that's helping them breathe better, and it's helping them smile more, and it's helping them do this, that, and the other. And they're all into that. And you go to that group, and you'll get kudos for saying nothing. You open your mouth to be radically honest, and they're like, thank you, let go of that. So it means absolutely nothing. There's groups for everything. Groups for anything. If so you can find out what you want to do, and then you can go to the group that rewards you for doing it, and then you can be blessed by that group, as long as that is serving your well-being. But that doesn't mean it's serving everyone's well-being. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the best thing for you overall. And the fact that you're getting 10 out of 10 scores by doing what you like to do in a given group doesn't necessarily mean that you should stay there, unless being popular is kind of your thing, in which case go to the group where you're good at doing what that group likes. If you like to drink beer and don't like to cut your hair and like being belligerent and all that, join a Hells Angels group and you'll fit right in. You'll be, the more you do that, you'll be elected the leader. But if you like to talk for 2 or 3 hours and all that, be a politician or do podcasts where that's valued. And so so it's basically putting the power back to you. Who do you want to be? How do you want to get there? Psychedelics and stuff are tools. And the labels, the political overtones of bigger dose, better, this, more this, more this, that's completely political. And it's very subjective about the goal. So you'll have someone saying, 5-MeO-T, it's the only thing. Why would you do this instead of this? Well, 5-MeO, DMT probably wouldn't have doubled my free time, increased my wages, and da-da-da-da-da. And I did a very tiny dose of MDMA on that, for that particular focus. I may want to take 5-MeO DMT for something else, So it's up to you. It's up to you. And it's your relationship with yourself, your dreams, your intuition, etc., that is really the only safety net to protect you from the dogma of any group, of any organization, including the psychedelic groups, which are tempting to be more bonded in some ways because you're a devastatingly threatened minority, and so you want to stick together, but not to such an extent that you get swept away from what's really good for your well-being. See you on the next video.